20 years may seem like a long time, but for survivors, for those who lost loved ones, and for our first responders, it can sometimes seem like yesterday.
I can't believe it's been 20 years.
It is hard to believe that it's been 20 years.
It's been 20 years, which you can't believe.
On 9/11, I was smack in the middle of Lower Manhattan.
I was in my cubicle and the fella next door, his wife called and said that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center.
The morning of 9/11, I was actually out of town up in southern New Hampshire preparing to go for a hike.
So I was at home and I was getting ready to go to a risk meeting up in New Hampshire. And I got a call from my mother, as a matter of fact. She said a plane just hit the World Trade Center.
I thought it was just probably some sort of small Cessna or something.
I thought that it was a small plane. Small planes normally fly up the Hudson River.
First reaction was, you know, someone in a Cessna really just messed up.
When I saw what was on television, the North Tower burning, it was obvious that this was a major disaster. And then maybe 3 minutes later, the South Tower was hit. So it was obvious that it was a terrorist attack.
We watched the second plane go in, and then from there knew that, you know, obviously this was something big that had happened and that we needed to be ready to respond.
Yeah, we had some friends visiting, actually some family visiting from England, and when I looked at the plane, when I saw the plane hit the second time, I looked at them and said, something's going on here. I got in my car, started driving, and as I was driving, listening, hearing the other planes that were that had crashed or went into the Pentagon. You know, we didn't know what was going to happen. I have to go over the bridges on Cape Cod, and as I drove over the bridge, I'm thinking, this could happen anywhere right now.
When I saw the news and saw the buildings collapsing, I knew at that point that I needed to get back to Massachusetts, that our team would be deploying. There was no doubt.
And I remember our leadership at the time kind of getting us all together and telling us we were going to go out to Maynard here to work in lieu of Region 2, who was evacuating the cities.
Did all our work here. We came here and did it. I worked here, I think like 3 or 4 days, and then we got a couple days off, and then I was sent down to New York.
I do remember driving down in the advance van, and the person that was driving was asking why I was crying. I was pretty much bawling my eyes out. Talking to my 18-year-old daughter, who to her was, I was going somewhere I'd never come back from.
I foolishly stood around for about 40 minutes as thousands of people were streaming past us, getting away from the World Trade Center area.
A lot of what I remember of that day was the city emptying out because everyone who was in downtown area just wanted to leave.
You know, there was a lot of commotion in the street and you're hearing a lot of rumors. I decided to leave the area, but I first went back up to my office to get my belongings. And maybe 2 minutes later, major loud rumble lasted about 10 seconds. My building started to shake, and about 10 seconds later, it just stopped and it was quiet. I didn't know what to make of what that was until I went towards the staircase and I looked out the window again, and it was pitch black outside and it looked like it was snowing out.
I was getting a ride in at night to Ground Zero by state troopers, and I told the trooper I'd worked there before, and one of them turned around and he said to me, "You're not going to recognize anything." They dropped me off about 5 blocks from Ground Zero. I had to walk, and I couldn't get my bearings. It was one of those, I just couldn't figure out where it was. And even when the fact where the window that I was in '93 looked right down at the Millennium Hotel. And when I finally got to see where the Millennium Hotel was, I still just couldn't figure out exactly where things were.
So seeing firsthand some of the disasters, some of the unreal sights that I would never think I would see as a responder. 200 and some odd story buildings laying in a pile of rubble and no signs of anybody wandering around that we could rescue other than New York City firemen and police. So it was a pretty unreal situation, very solemn, hard to explain the sights.
Everything was just Well, it was a mess. It was a wreck. I mean, girders in buildings and just the pile and the smoke. And the smell was the worst thing. The smell was absolutely, it's a smell I've never smelled before, haven't smelled since, and I really hope I don't ever smell again. It was, the only thing I could equate it to was it must be the smell of war, because it was just this putrid smell that was just terrible.
I was able to get to a part of the lower Manhattan that wasn't quite as covered in smoke. Eventually walked across the Manhattan Bridge to get to Brooklyn. Was able to, about halfway across the bridge, which was packed with thousands of people, I was able to turn around and take a look at lower Manhattan and see it in its entirety, and it was just a horrible sight.
We got back, we briefed our team to what we saw, and everybody was the same way. They kind of had the dropped open mouth stare as what are we going to do? What can we possibly do to make the situation better?
My apartment was, off limits because it was 2 blocks from the towers. So I had to go to my parents' house, and for those 4 hours, they hadn't heard from me, and all they were watching on TV was Lower Manhattan completely covered in smoke and dust and fire. So obviously they were very worried until I came, knocked on their door, and just to be with loved ones at a moment where the world was mourning and families were ripped apart.
It was definitely a tense time and a tense environment, and it was really stressful, and I think it put a lot of people into positions that they were uncomfortable in, and they succeeded. It was really people stepped up to the plate to be in that discomfort, but also to be really focused on helping the people who needed the help.
Look around, especially at this task force. Some people are simply born to serve. That's what they embody. That's what you embody.
There were all these people who just wanted to do something. They just wanted to do something for people. And he said, listen, they're going to be trying to hand you things, food or water. He said, just take something. Even if you're not thirsty, just take a bottle of water. It makes them feel better. So I remember we roll down the window, they're all cheering for us and clapping. And so, you grab the water, and they felt good about that. For that, it was, in the face of tragedy and all that, a lot of good came out of the people who were there. They really had sincere hearts and wanted to help.
I think 9/11 in many ways formed the foundation for the work that we do now. It is the thing that really sort of started to catapult us into the response world, and so I'm proud of where we've come as an agency, as an emergency management community.
Out of all the bad that 9/11 brought, there was a little good. As I feel my bond with my 2 daughters became greater because of it.
I grew up with the World Trade Center. I remember it being built. I was a kid, but I remembered, driving past the area. I remember when Philippe Petit crossed the towers and George Willig walked up the towers, and it felt like this was going to go on forever. It's still hard to accept that the towers are gone, but life does go on. For me, my experience working the response and recovery at 9/11 really kind of cemented my interest in just having a career in emergency management, and seeing the help that FEMA provided to me and thousands of others was really eye-opening. I worked my way into a career with FEMA.